Alright, so in this video we're checking out another 12 volt lithium iron phosphate battery. This one here is from CTOLITY, and if you guys remember from a few weeks ago, I did a review on one of their smaller power stations. I am going to do another video with this battery and the power station together later, but we're just going to talk about the battery for today and my testing of it. I'm not going to talk about the inverter here. I've just finished up my basically the max current draw testing that I did with this inverter. This is a 1000 watt inverter. Inverter is not included with the battery, if you're wondering. I just finished my testing. I figured I would talk about it after while the results are fresh in my head. So we're just talking about the battery and not the inverter. Just come with these little handles here. The dimensions of this particular battery is about 10.2 inches by 6.6 inches by about 8.46 inches. And it's technically a group 24 size battery. So I'll show you here what it looks like next to another group 24 size battery. The other one comes with different handles, of course. This is basically a little bit bigger than the mini size batteries and smaller than the group 31 size batteries. So should keep the dimensions in mind in terms of your application. The battery weighs about 23 pounds or around 10.5 kilograms. So compared to a typical 12 volts lead acid battery, it's going to weigh about a third of the weight, and it's going to have about double the capacity. Also, the lifespan is going to be significantly more. Lead acid usually lasts about 1 to 3 years before they die. Lithium iron phosphate will typically go about 10 years, and which means you're going to get like 4,000 to 15,000 cycles. So in the box, you get the battery and you get the manual. Also includes the M8 terminal screws on the top here, as well as the caps for the terminals themselves to keep them protected. The case itself here is a pretty good construction, very solid. It is IP65 waterproof rated, so if you're wondering if you can survive splashes, this should have no issues with that, although I don't recommend submerging. I don't think IP65 is meant for being submersible. So in the manual itself, there are some specifications here. 100 amp hours for the capacity, 1280 watt hours, voltage range 10 to 14.4 volts. The rated charge current, or the recommended charge current, is 20 amps. Now I have a 35 amp charger, which is typically a little bit more than what's recommended, but I always test with that one and it passed no problem. Didn't have any overheating issues, so that was all good. It does have a max charge current up to 50 amps, so it could have gone higher, but I believe after 50 amps, the heat will start building up and eventually the protections will start kicking in. So the BMS in here is a 100 amp BMS, very typical for these 12 volt batteries. And of course, it has all your standard protections like overcurrent protection, over discharge protection, overcharge protection, short circuit protection, high temperature protection, and low temperature protection. Now you are able to connect up multiples of these together in parallel or series, so it does have some different connection scenarios here. And basically you can connect them in series or parallel in groups of 4 to increase the current capacity or overall energy capacity. Now in terms of the capacity of my particular sample here, I ran it on my standard capacity meter, so I've charged it all the way to full 100%, and then I put my capacity meter and ran it all the way down to 0% until basically the voltage cutoff kicked in and turned off the battery. And surprisingly, I got a very nice 1329 watt hours. So the battery is rated for 1280 watt hours, and I got almost 50 watt hours more. So roughly around 4% extra capacity compared to what is advertised. So that's actually a little bit better than normal. Sometimes, usually you'll get a little bit more, but not usually that much more. I typically get somewhere in the 1310 to 1315. So 1329 is quite a bit better than expected. And in terms of what you can run on this amount of capacity, basically it has to do with how many watts your device is pulling. So for example, an air conditioner at 600 watts is about 2.1 hours. Fridge at 100 watts draw is like 35 hours. TV at 90 watts, 14.2 hours. And a gas boiler at 120 watts, say about 10.7 hours. So it really depends on the device you're using on here. So one feature this battery does not have that you might be wondering about is the self-heating feature that typically on batteries that are going to be more in the $275 to $325 price range, quite a bit more than this one. This one is under $200. And for that feature, if you are going to be using this battery in an environment where it's going to be always below freezing, that's something you're going to want. This battery does not have that. So if you are in a below freezing environment, this battery is not recommended because you don't want to be charging lithium iron phosphate batteries below freezing. You can damage the battery. So I do want to talk about the max current draw that I was able to test on this 1000 watt inverter. Most of these 100 amp hour batteries can typically run 100 amps continuously without any issue, which I assumed. I didn't actually look at the manual, but this particular model says its rated discharge current is 50 amps, which is a little unusual. Usually find most of these are rated for 100 amps and then they can burst up to 200 or 300 amps, but it's saying that the max discharge current is 100 amps on this one. So I assumed after looking at this that maybe it has some sort of max current, overcurrent protection that would kick in at 100 amps, but that wasn't the case. So I actually cooked up two things to this inverter to get it over 1,000 watts. So a heat gun and a vacuum cleaner. The heat gun only draws maybe like 300-ish watts. The vacuum cleaner draws about around 900 watts. So 900 watts, no problem. It was, I think, around 88 amps on the clamp meter. And then when I turned on the heat gun as well as the vacuum cleaner and I bumped this up to almost 1200 watts, it started drawing almost 125 amps total, which was normal for most of these 100 amp hour batteries that I get. I usually never have any issues with these 100 amp hour batteries. The BMS is being able to go to 125 amps. Usually that's just normal. But because this battery says it's rated to 100 amps, I would think that the max overcurrent protection would kick in, but apparently it must be rated for more than that. So either the documentation is outdated, perhaps, or it's just using the same kind of BMSs that are in a lot of these 100 amp hour batteries, and they can go up to 200 or 300 amps. Typically what happens is as the current draw goes higher and higher and you start getting closer to 200 amps, 300 amps, the BMS starts getting very warm, and then what happens is the over temperature protection kicks in and that shuts the BMS off there, which cuts off the power from the battery. So as I always recommend for these 100 amp hour batteries, I would not go over 1,000 watts with the inverter. This one does go a little bit over. I kind of maxed it out. I think I ran for like 5 minutes and this battery was totally fine. And then I did check the temperatures on the terminals. They were not even warm at 125 amps for 5 minutes. So definitely this BMS can go more, but because the specs say 100 amps, I would definitely limit it to 1,000 watts. I know there's people out there that can throw a 3,000 watt inverter on here and just blast the battery, but I wouldn't recommend it if you're going to be using it on a daily basis. Obviously, there's going to be cases where you're going to want to go over for brief periods of time. That's going to be fine, but keep in mind that even at 1,000 watts here, or close to 125 amps, they're going to be drawing this battery down if you run that at a continuous level in about an hour or less. While this has a tremendous amount of capacity, if you draw a really high amount of current for a very long period of time, it only lasts about an hour because at the end of the day, it's only 100 amp hours capacity total. So my conclusion at the end of the day is it's a good battery, passed all my tests for what I would expect for this type of battery, 12 volts and 100 amp hours. And as I said, if you keep it under 125 amps total, 1,000 watts in terms of your inverter, you should be good to go in this battery, no problem. And again, a little bit later, maybe a few weeks from now, I'll have another video where I'm going to be using this battery with the power station I reviewed for them last month, and I'm going to combine them, and I'll show you how you can use this to get basically the functions from the power station, the inverter, and the USB ports combined with the extra capacity you can get from this battery to get really extremely long run times for a lot of your devices. So that'll be coming up in a few weeks, but yeah, put a link in the description if you guys want to check out this particular battery, and I will talk to you guys in the next one.